In terms of regulatory compliance, we know that tech has enabled us. It gives us that opportunity to comply. But we also know that in some organizations, somebody's going to shut down the server. You have to go to the office and sort something.
Oh, that's it.
Yes, of course. And we don't want to mention names.
We don't want to
Top
mention
of mind,
it.
I have thought about 3 to
Top of
4
mind, no.
agencies already.
By the time as a company you go make those rounds, you're exhausted. And that's it makes it difficult for corporate governance to be achieved for especially the smaller companies.
Hello, this is the LHC Pod, where we inspire elevated living. My name is Emmanuel, and I have with me, as always, Lola. Lola, what's up?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, very well.
And as always, we're not alone. We have a guest, a wonderful guest, I must say.
I expect you to be using the superlatives.
Okay, wonderfulest. Does that work?
Okay.
All right. So our guest today is someone that has, I would say she's been in the corporate world for quite a while. And we're honored to have her with us today. Without further ado, I introduce to all of us Aisha Duze.
Hi, Aisha.
Hi,
Let's put
Aisha.
our hands together.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
It's an honor to be with you guys here. I look forward to a wonderful time.
Glad to have you, Aisha.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So what are we discussing today, Lola?
All right, so today we are talking about something very interesting. Power, purpose, and politics. Guess what that is? Corporate governance.
Whoa.
Corporate governance,
whoa,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. This means a lot of things to a lot of people, based on experience anyway. And we're just looking at how do we dissect it? But let's even start from the beginning. So we talk about corporate governance in the broadest sense. What would you say corporate governance stands for, especially in the corporate landscape of today?
The general definition of corporate governance is the rules and processes that guide how a company is directed and controlled. That's the general definition, right? And then you have two sides to it.
Okay.
So you have the business, the internal business aspect where you're talking of the board and the management, the HR policies and what have you. What happens internally within the organization, right? And then you also have the regulatory aspect where you're looking at their compliance, how they go by the rules set by, say, the CAC and what have you. And as regards today's climate, what's going, thanks to tech, everything is moving pretty fast.
Yeah.
Corporate governance still needs to fall within those two major categories, but how people apply it has changed a bit, right? Thanks to tech and how running a company has changed, especially with remote work and the ability to automate and to be able to operate remotely and do a lot of things very, very differently. So that's what it looks like today.
So how does a company then stand out in today's climate? What difference does corporate governance really make? Especially, let's now center it on things that are happening as we speak. What difference does corporate governance? Do you have any? Maybe could you talk us through one or two examples? Of course, you don't have to mention the names, but maybe
sure.
one or two examples of how corporate governance plays out in today's climate.
So when you're looking at corporate governance, it might vary slightly depending on what field that company is playing in. If first of all, is it a tech-enabled company? Is it one of those companies that operates outside of that sphere? Is it a big company? Is it a small company? Is it a state-owned company? So many factors apply to how corporate governance is applied. However, some key things will stand out. You're looking for, in terms of a company that's being governed properly. You look for structure, profitability, transparency, accountability, and all of this is geared towards preventing things like fraud, preventing mismanagement, preventing poor HR policies, preventing high staff turnover. There's so many things that come into making a company get a high rating in terms of corporate governance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, like I said before, it will depend heavily on the size, what field they play in, and the regulatory framework around that particular exactly that particular company.
Right.
All of these things factor
Okay.
into how they rate. As far as Nigeria is concerned, I know there was a bank that got an award last year for corporate governance from the NSC. I'm not going to name names. We have also on the other extreme of it, a lot of our fintechs falling into or falling below the line in terms of corporate governance for reasons that include not having a proper governance structure. Your proper governance structure will go around your board. Who constitutes your board, right? What kind of people make up your board? Your board shouldn't be made up of just your friends and family and investors, right?
Yeah, sure.
Ideally, you would have your board would be your executive directors, your non-executive directors,
And non-executives, yes.
and
yes.
within the non-executives you have a set of independent directors.
Yeah,
so
sure.
that's like your basic system. But a lot of our, not just fintechs, a lot of our startups fail to do that level of due diligence. Now that now brings us to the other aspect where there isn't enough enforcement, right? Because yes, you get your clearance from whatever regulatory body that may be. For in case of fintechs might be CBN, SEC, and whoever else is concerned with that. Now, how far are they going in terms of enforcing, and ensuring that these companies meet these basic requirements before they go into operation or while they're operating? Now, so these things are taken into consideration, and when there are cracks or there are where they don't meet up, ideally before things go south, you should be able to check them.
Yeah, sure.
And then you have also within the company itself the structure. So you have aside having met, let's say you have a board, assuming you have the board, you've done all of that, and then you have a chain of command that isn't clear and defined. You have roles and responsibilities that are not clearly set. You have a set of you have your executive director, you have your senior managers and what have you. However, you have a case where your head of HR is afraid to speak to some of the interns because the intern is the MD's relative or something or the other, which shouldn't be, right? Because it's, so you have the roles and responsibilities, but boxes are just being ticked.
Yeah, I take on this because again, we're all talking about corporate governance, and most times I just see people banded these words around.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
yes, and I have to be very frank with you because again, we see do the 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 work and everything, and we see how this
It plays out.
plays out at the end of the day. Some of these things are basically just set up to tick the boxes so that you get the certification, the ISOs and all of that certification, and then just move on. The truth remains that how many of these corporate organizations, even the ones that have been awarded, right? Because even those that collected the award go into the organization and interview their staff in terms of staff welfare and everything. You find out that they're not even doing so much. It's like you just look, you wake up and say, okay, I want to give an award. Who is better amongst all the bad eggs?
Might not necessarily be who is better. It might be a simple case of, well, this person has been my friend and they sponsored us last year, so let's
try and
return a favor for a favor.
Yeah.
We know.
We know all of
these things.
Reciprocity.
Exactly.
And we see businesses fail
Yes.
due to poor governance system that
Mm-hmm.
has been put in place and everything. What for me are the key challenges that this organization, why do they shy away from instituting basic things that could ensure longevity for the business, for the brand? Why do they shy away?
I don't think it's that they shy away.
Okay.
It's not that there are no repercussions. It's just as simple as that.
So you feel
Because-
that the
Because if I
regulators,
yes, they're not playing their part, right? There should be, especially if you're publicly listed or you've taken investors' funds and you fail. Somebody has to pay the price. People are not going to jail. People are not sanctioned. Licenses are not withdrawn. people just go on, business
we don't
as
see-
usual.
we don't
Because
see that
if that happens, if there's that consistent punishment, so to speak, for those failings within a company, within an organization, it's not a choice. You have to do your job. Because, people, we look at it as if, okay, it's something around ethics. No, because there are true consequences. People lose their jobs.
Yes.
Okay, your social security is threatened. The economy pays for it. Okay,
Yes.
the country itself, you can't get as much tax revenue because a whole company has just disappeared and somebody has run away with people's money.
People are not even remitting pensions.
Exactly. You're looking at a situation where you have people are able to source funds publicly. People are crowdfunding and starting businesses and disappearing. So there should be repercussions. There should be somebody has to pay the price, but they're not, and that's the only reason why it continues.
If that's the case, then we're now looking at proper management of those boards to ensure proper corporate governance.
Yes.
But how can this management be done without necessarily interfering in the activities of the boards? Because on the one hand, you're trying to ensure that these boards get everything done right. On the other hand, you're not trying to get into their nitty-gritty and tell them, oh, this is how you do it. So how does that balance get achieved?
And just to add again,
Yes.
is my question would be a very direct one. Are some boards complacent?
Yes.
You're going there? Okay.
So it's two things.
Yes.
How do you get the boards to do their job, right? First of all, you have to constitute a proper board. You apart from your executive directors, the non-executive and independent, ideally should, especially your independent, should have nothing to do with the company, right? They are not on a salary. They are at best on some kind of maybe annual stipend or something, or annual fee and a stipend for when they sit. So your independent directors have to be there, or an independent committee has to be there to provide some sort of oversight function. What is the purpose of a board in the first instance? The board itself, right? It's to, first of all, you represent the stakeholders, right?
Absolutely.
And then you also ensure that proper decisions are being made for the company, for the success of the company, removed from, what's happening inside. Okay, so once you've constituted that board and you constitute a board based on its, you have to ensure that it's diverse in terms of skill, in terms of gender representation, and then you now begin to go down to perhaps geographical or whatever else might apply as based on that company, right? So in terms of skill, let's say, for example, it's a food production company. Aside from people who know how to, maybe perhaps are on the board based on their years of experience in that sector, in that industry, yes, that knowledge applies. However, you also need people who are from maybe finance on the board. You need somebody who has dealt with HR in that sector on the board. Maybe I'm just giving an example. So your government relations person, your public PR person, somebody who, so you constitute a board based on the I'm looking for the word now, but the key, the essentials, right, to keep that concern going. And then you have that, make sure that those responsibilities are clearly defined. They are not crossing. Nobody is standing on anybody's head.
Yes.
Open, clear, transparent communication, and every voice is essential. Everybody should have a say. Everybody should be able to have their say. And it always comes out as easier said than done. But if you're appointed to be on the board, you should have that confidence to be able to say, look, I need to say my piece, and if you're not allowed to say your piece, you should be able to act on that based on, okay, I'm alerting the shareholders that this is my stance, and I'm not being listened to. Okay, so these are the issues. Now, then that brings us down to structured reporting, so to speak.
Okay.
So that when we meet, records are taken. Now it's easy. You can do it digitally. It's there for everybody to see. It can be shared immediately. Whatever needs to be shared within the board, because what happens within the board is, except when it's high level. Except you need to inform the shareholders, which will be done in their report and what have you. So you have that structured communication. You have the meetings going on as they should, when scheduled. Okay, so then you have that, and then you have being proactive.
Okay.
A lot of the time, it's not just the boards. You have a situation. I think it's a culture we have here. We're waiting for something to happen, and then we start to run around. So all of these things factor into being able to run a board properly, and it really isn't as it depends on how willing the group of individuals are, which brings us to the question you asked about complacency.
Yeah.
Again, that can happen because there are no repercussions. We don't. How often do you hear of shareholder activism in this country? I know last year there was the whole brouhaha about one company. It wasn't a bank. It was an oil company. Some of the shareholders, I think the minority shareholders, had some issues, and they raised. It happens. Every now and again. But that's a very large company. But you have shareholders from some others. Some of us bought shares, and we've not heard anything. Companies have, and we just. So it's a collective responsibility, which is why I think that corporate governance is important. Everybody needs to know about it, because if you know about it, you're able to demand better. If you don't know, you're not going to ask. Right, the knowledge, your understanding of it makes a huge difference. Yeah. If you don't have an understanding of corporate governance, that's why somebody can come with a multi-level whatever scheme and bamboozle you and go away, because you're not asking the right question.
All right. So Aisha, let's talk about how tech can make corporate governance more seamless. We've talked about the challenges, and we've talked about what actually is not working at the moment. Yes. So let's even talk about how tech, we are now in the digital age, we have AI, we have all sorts of things going on. Things are changing every second. Yeah. Can corporate governance benefit from these changes?
Yes, it can, and it actually has begun to. The part of the regulatory compliance is now easier. A lot of the government agencies allow companies to be able to register online. You do everything online, make your payments online, right? CAC allow you to do your search online. Yeah, a lot of these things are now being done online. You're talking about things like cybersecurity and data protection. That is also largely digital now. Okay. It's easier for companies who are onboarding to do the verification process online. I think we all know how easy it is now to open accounts with some of these fintechs. You don't need to go in. So it's making it a lot easier. HR is also gone digital. It makes it seamless for most people, makes it faster. Tech has elevated or made it easier rather for companies to meet their corporate governance rules. You have the regulatory compliance is now, for most of the government agencies, is now digital. You can register your company online, you can do your searches online. You have the cybersecurity and data privacy aspects as well, making it easier for onboarding process, for companies to verify their employees. We now know how easy it is for us to register on fintechs and get our accounts opened, unlike when we used to have to go into the bank with 16 passports and what have you. It's a lot easier now. Right. You stand and so it's tech has really boosted the process. It makes there's an opportunity. I like to think of it as an opportunity for companies to comply. Is a lot easier. It's just if they're willing to take advantage of these opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question. You just spoke about how tech is enabling corporate governance. But the irony of it, again, sometimes is the tech organizations themselves are found wanting in corporate governance brouhaha and issues. People have complained, staff have complained about payment of staff salaries, different, all sorts of experiences, infractions here and there, people not treated nicely, founders behaving as if they are Jesus Christ and God and could do whatever they like with no repercussions. Because again, you mentioned that earlier on and stuff like that. Why is it rampant? And even to manage investors' funds, it's a problem. And you see founders earning as high, you raise a round, and then the next thing you give who sets the salary structure for the founder? Is it a poverty? Has it now become a poverty alleviation? Has it now become a poverty alleviation scam or scheme? Right? Where you've raised the rounds and then you just assign to yourself a certain amount of money, and then you begin to live a bogus lifestyle and all, and nobody can address you. And at the end of the day, investments go down the drain and nobody is held accountable for it. Why is this so prevalent? And because again, these actions can, how am I going to put it now? It deters investors from
investors'
confidence, and then they are no longer now in terms of tech investments in the countries. It's very dried up. Nobody's even looking at it.
Absolutely.
Kind of. So I just want to understand what is in it. Why you're building tech platforms to enable tech governance, and then you are exploiting it and even failing in your own. Maybe you could shed light on the key reasons for that.
The key reasons remain that there's not enough, there's not commensurate enforcement. Okay. That's really where it lies, right? Because in the first instance, when you have your tech startup and the corporate governance itself is not set up, and we're talking, the focus is internal, forget for now the external. Let's just take any random tech startup now, and you have the board made up of the relatives and the key investor, and the key investor is the chairman, and there's the board of directors is me, my best friend, and you know, that is not, you know, that already is a red flag. It should be a red flag for if any foreign investor. Unfortunately, we know what can happen. You know, you could tell the foreign investor, this is your structure. Meanwhile, whatever else is on ground. And if that person fails to do due diligence, they find themselves sinking their funds into something that isn't as structured as it should be. So that's where the external regulatory compliance needs to step up. Okay. You need to verify that what has been filed, what is on paper, is actually what stands. That's why we're talking about the box ticking. You know, it's very easy for you to go and get something that's on paper. We see it happen all the time. Or get a certain look, get a Caucasian on your board, and you get whatever you want approved, which shouldn't, you know, really be the case. It's box ticking, right? So I think the more aware people are of these infractions, the more they're likely to dig deeper in terms of investing. Okay. We need to look at the red flags for both investors and employees. Okay. You don't go to a place because that's the in place. It's a tech startup and they have money. They have money doesn't necessarily mean they're profitable. They have money doesn't necessarily mean that they have the internal structure where you can go there and grow and thrive. So you look out for these things. You can do a basic search. You can, as an employee, right, or potential employee, you look out what's their structure looking like. Go to their website. I sometimes just randomly look. I'm like, oh, these people are making a buzz. Let's see what's going on. I open their website and the first page is filled with grammatical errors. I'm like, are these people even serious? You know, so those little things can stand out, make a world of difference.
You don't have the right person.
Yeah, you already don't have it's shaky because it indicates to me that somebody's not paying attention to the finer details. So if you're not paying attention to what you look like to the public, what else are you missing? You know, as an organization. So for someone who is a potential employee, you know, looking at what happens with people within these organizations. All right, you're looking for the basic things, and people who are say a fresh graduate who has no work experience probably wouldn't know what to look out for. Experienced people who have worked in more stable organizations might know what to look out for. So I'll just say it for those who are just starting out, that you should just do a simple online search and look at what the profile of that company is looking like. What are they paying attention to details? Forget the flashy the PR and talk to people who work there and just casually find out what is it like. I hear they're paying so much. What's it like? I don't have any time. I'm there Monday to Sunday. I can't sleep. I have no social life. Blah blah blah. Oh, there's this and this and this person is having an affair with that and that person. These things, it comes out. You hear these things, and those are indicators that you're not really gonna have a nice time in that place, right? What are the chances for growth? As someone who's just starting out, you need to look into those prospects. So there's so many. There's just a lot to look out for. What's their is there a defined line of reporting? Who is your immediate superior? What's that person like? Some people can't even tell you. Like, well, I don't know. I'm supposed to be reporting to this person, but I end up, yes, and so it's not flowing. You find yourself there. You find that you're stagnated because you can't even perform the way you're supposed to. So there's so much that could go wrong when you don't do that due diligence. So you need to check all of those things before you even begin to seek employment. I know people are desperate. People are looking for work and all that. Yeah, right. So they're like, I will just go ahead and do this. But if you're not, especially if you're just starting out, you're not able to gather enough experience to move ahead, then you're just going to be running around in circles. And then for investors, you have to look who constitutes their board. Right, go beyond what is listed. Assuming for a lot of people, I know that a lot of companies, I try to check. They say our team, and then you just see one long story. Our team is made up of this, and no pictures, no nothing.
No, exactly. So you can't pinpoint.
And you can't find out. Okay, fine. Perhaps I should go to SEC or I should go to CBN, whoever their governing body, so that I can find out. Go to CAC, check online, find out for yourself. If you are seeing that is one family name all through, it's not necessarily a red flag because some family businesses can actually be properly structured, right, and be profitable.
Right.
But when you're seeing that Mr. and Mrs. and their son who is 6 years old and there's no independent board member or there's no actually no proper constituted board, you have no information on who the MD is because that might be separate from who is actually the CEO or whatever the chairman or whatever. So if that information is missing, take it with a pinch of salt. Just make sure you try to check a bit more before you put your money in that venture. Are they listed? What scandals have you heard about these companies online? These are things that as an investor you should look out for. Don't just take the word of that guy who is trying to raise funds because they will tell you anything you want to know. So that background, that due diligence needs to be done. Now, where you've done your due diligence and the person still manages to circumvent all of this, then we now need to look back at the regulatory compliance bodies and say, look, how are you going to, why are you allowing this to happen? And the onus is now on us to demand better because we know we deserve, better. It's a case of knowing what should be and knowing that when these gaps exist, it's time for SEC to step in. It's time for CBN to step in. It's time for, I need to, what's it called? NDPC, or so Data Protection Council. Look, this happened. My data is floating around because, there are things that now fall back on us, the stakeholders, to enforce upon. You have to say, look, we demand this.
My next question would then be: we've talked about investors doing their due diligence before releasing funds for startups. We have that, but you've also mentioned regulatory bodies living up to expectations and then coming to the party at the end of the day. But who speaks for the staff who has been promised heaven and earth and say, okay, you know what, we're giving you equity. Don't worry, by the time you work for us, 6 months, your equity in the organization is XYZ. And sometimes they would even do insider trading at the end of the day. And we have all of this. Who speaks for the employee who has been, would I say, duped now at the end of the, and you expect that the HR unit should be able to handle this and resolve and ensure amicably and ensure that whatever has been promised is fulfilled at the end of the day. But we find out that they just basically I don't want to use the word that is coming to my mind, but it's just occupying positions.
Yes, absolutely. You said it. You said, well, I was going to start with that.
Yeah, they just occupy positions, right?
I was going to start with that.
And who speaks and how can we begin to get accountability from that point?
Like you said, people are just occupying positions. A lot of people are ticking boxes as far as corporate governance goes. So how do we fix that? At the risk of sounding like an idealist, we're supposed to have we're supposed to have labor laws, right? We are supposed to have, organizations that ensure that they're enforced. But then again, you see, because of tech, a lot has changed, and a lot has changed quickly. As in terms of the public sector, on the other hand, they are still lagging behind. So when you're talking to them about certain things, I honestly doubt that they have. I mean, they're trying to catch on, but they don't even have the capacity to tackle some of these things. So you're now looking at the situation where someone promised you equity, but within our labor laws, don't quote me on this, but I'm not sure it's clear cut what happens when the person that promises. There might be a new act or something there right now, and honestly, I would say that I don't know. I'm not sure, okay. But it should be there that the person promises. Because I'm not sure that the person can now stand up and go to the NSC and say, oh, look, these people said, I'll go to the CBN and say, look, these people promised me equity and they didn't deliver on it. So these are the finer threads that I'm not clear on. I'm not going to pretend that I know what they are. However, it's one of the things that people, like I said, red flags you should look out for. We know what society we find ourselves in. Don't allow yourself to be wooed by these flashy things. People are going.
Blame humans.
Because you're going in there, and you're going in there based on promises that people are making to you because you want a job. But if the person falls back on it, let's say you're going to take the legal route. Assuming you think that the person doesn't mean. You don't want to go and start a court case that is going to go on for the next 5-10 years. So you don't know. What is the enforcement? What are the chances that you can enforce a contract? These are the things you think about. And if these people learn that it is not that easy to get people bamboozled, they themselves will begin to make the necessary adjustments. Because if you can't find staff within your locality, you need to make adjustments. People are desperate, yes, but at some point we also need to begin to push back as people. Like I said again, I'm sounding like an idealist, but it's the tougher road to walk. But if we're looking for certain types of changes, because for now we know the power is supposed to be that, the power is supposed to be with us as the people that look, we can demand better. But if demanding better also requires certain types of sacrifices, right? And I'm not going to just jump at an opportunity because it looks nice on paper. What happens when this doesn't go right? What happens if this person doesn't meet their obligations to me? Do I have a clear path of recourse? If it is not clear to you, don't go in. Don't go in. They might find somebody else to bamboozle, but you'd have saved yourself a lifetime of grief. You'd have saved yourself the mental stress, of dealing with somebody who is supposed to be your HR to advocate your cause, basically turning their back on your situation because they themselves don't even have the capacity or the power to handle it. Because they are there not because they have the experience or the skills, they just are there to collect the salary and go home. And you find that happening a lot with our startups, right? So it's dicey, and I would just say it as it is. You can't. It's not a luxury. It's not because it's just the fact that it's not worth it at the end of the day. Okay, you start off thinking you're getting this and that. You've planned your life. In the middle of nowhere, you show up at the office and it's locked. There's nothing worse than that.
Honestly,
and you've put in so much. You've made plans. You've probably taken a loan. You've done that and done that. Yes. But if you had walked away, you probably would have allowed yourself the opportunity. Again, people say I'm an idealist. But you would have found yourself some other opportunity pursuing something else than this mirage given. Because, like I said, look at what they're offering you. Don't be afraid to negotiate.
Good to be truth.
Don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to negotiate, and don't be afraid to insist that okay. But if you those promises are made and you don't see and they for some reason go back on it and you don't see a clear path for recourse, don't go ahead. Don't go ahead.
So let's now tie this all together and look at it from a solutions perspective. Okay. So if there is one thing, just one thing that needed to change about corporate governance, especially in the African context, we've talked about the current structural regulatory concerns, issues around ethics and things like that. So what would that one thing be? If something just needed to change now to ensure that corporate governance is where it should be or what it should be. Transparency.
I think it's transparency is at the forefront of everything. If companies are transparent, if even the regulators themselves insist and enforce on that transparency, it makes a world of change, because people are seeing things as they are. People are seeing what's happening, and changes will be made. You wouldn't know the financial status of a company unless they're being transparent. You wouldn't know if they're having high employee attrition unless they're being transparent, right? And tech has made it much, much easier for you to know these things, okay? People can go on Glassdoor and see and hear complete. You can go on LinkedIn and see and find what you want. So transparency, I think, for me is the key thing across Africa that would make a major difference in corporate governance.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay.
There are even sites you can go to check funding status.
Yes, and find out.
Should corporate governance be taught in school so that those who are graduating or maybe in secondary school, they can begin to pick one or two knowledge about corporate governance, and those who are setting up MSMEs, like either the small scale or the medium scale, do they really need corporate governance? And if yes, what are the benefits and how should they begin to work their way through it?
Okay. I do believe it should be taught in schools. I think that it's actually already being taught in schools. It's just not. It might not be all the. So I'm guessing someone who's doing commerce or business or something at that level, because I don't know. I was a science student all through, so I'm really not sure what it's like. I just
like check.
But I think that it's being taught at pre-tertiary level at some point. Maybe what may be needed at this point to be an adjustment of the curriculum to account for the changes that have happened recently. It's key, and if possible, be as practical, as hands-on with the teaching as possible, because that's where a difference is made. You can tell someone who's tried that the difference between a company being run properly in terms of corporate governance and one that isn't. The likely strong difference would be that the management and the board and the executives probably had some experience in a structured environment prior to starting their own thing, and that makes a world of difference. So that hands-on experience makes the difference. It's one thing to know it in your head, it's another thing to be able to live it and have to deal with the challenges, and another thing to be able to grow through the ranks before you get to. So it's teaching it is important for SMEs and MSMEs. Corporate governance is key to longevity. It's what makes a company sustainable. Okay, so you're starting what you're doing with the hopes that you can sustain, survive, and grow bigger. And you cannot do that without corporate governance. So yes, they should get that training as much as possible. Spend some time under the mentorship of someone who, has done what you're doing. Right? If you can, do an internship. Humble yourself. Go and learn. Experience it. That's why I like the what they have with when people do what's it called when you have with the artisans and what have you got? Apprenticeships. Thank you. So you do the apprenticeships. You go down there, get your hands dirty. You get the experience that is required for you to lift your own enterprise eventually. So it's important, and it can be done. I know that a lot of universities these days have programs where the graduates go to some kind of entrepreneurship training program. I know entrepreneurship has been introduced to schools. But beyond that book knowledge, I think that more than anything, a period where you can get your hands dirty, experience it for yourself, see what a functioning chain of command looks like, right? See what a proper management system looks like. When I say management system now, I'm talking of your executive, the managers, and the general flow of employees, who reports to who, what a reporting chain should look like, how it should operate, where you have cross functionalities and multidisciplinary teams, how they're supposed to operate. All of that makes a world of difference. So that when you start your own company, you know what to avoid. You already have you know what it feels like to have somebody either undermine you, and you know how to tackle it. You know how to check this and that. How you want your employees to be able to openly communicate and say, okay, look, this is a problem I have, and it's preventing me from getting my job done. You have a lot of these startups where people are operating under fear. It shouldn't be, all right? And not even just startups, even with the older companies. So there should be a period where, beyond your book learning and your knowledge, you have gained some practical experience. That makes a world of difference in terms of corporate governance compliance within the business itself. Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing.
All right.
Amazing.
My next question, just before we wind down, would be from the regulatory bodies, what should the agenda in terms of expectation be from them?
Sheesh. See, that's a tough one. That's a tough one, because politics is a problem. Whether we like it or not, politics has played a major role in affecting how the regulatory compliance goes. A change in government might instantly lead to a change in policies.
Yeah, sure.
And that is in itself something that it just throws companies off. You told us 4 years ago this and that is what was required of us, and then we're just starting to put that together and get licensed, and then a new government comes in, and we're back to square one. So we can't ignore the political aspect of it, but so we need to vote more wisely. Okay. That's one. Okay. But then again, beyond that, do your part, as a citizen. You know this is what is expected of you. Try your best to comply. I know, I'm not even going to lie, it's not easy. Okay? You're just done with CAC, and then somebody else shows up and you're like, okay, I'll try. And then somebody else shows up, and in between, we know the issues we have without putting our dirty linen in public. You're trying to sort one here and sort one there just because you want to operate. Okay, you're sorting and sorting and sorting.
Yes.
We should, I don't know.
Desist?
It's desist.
And then frustration? Frustrate your
I'm not going to say desist. I'm not going to say desist.
Okay.
But we should push and hope. All right?
Okay.
And work collectively towards, because the truth is, we all know one person or the other who works with some of these places. Let's begin to advocate for, a more workable system in terms of the regulatory aspect. Okay, tech has made it easier. I don't know if I should even say this live. So in terms of regulatory compliance, we know that tech has enabled us. It gives us that opportunity to comply. But we also know that in some organizations, somebody's going to shut down the server so that you have to walk in and go there and sort one or two before you move ahead.
And top of mind, 3-4 agencies.
Exactly. So by the time as a company you go make those rounds, you're exhausted. And that's it makes it difficult for corporate governance to be achieved for especially the smaller companies. Okay. So let's try to we can only advocate. We can only advocate.
To conclude, what would your final thoughts be in general around this topic? where we're going from here essentially. What would you say needs to happen next, generally speaking?
I think that, generally speaking, more knowledge.
Okay.
More people need to know. Yes, awareness.
is key.
Yes.
Yes. Awareness
More
is key.
more awareness. The more of us know what good corporate governance looks like, the
Yes.
more of us will demand better. And the more of us
Absolutely.
will participate actively in advocating for better corporate governance within and from the regulatory bodies as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Aisha. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes.
I've had fun.
Yeah, same
Thank
here.
you.
Same
This
here.
has been very very informative. Thank you very much, Aisha.
Thank you.
I hope when we call,
Yeah.
you would answer or pick up our calls.
Gladly.
Again.
Gladly.
I want to say a big thank you to our viewers out there who have stayed with us through this moment.
Thank
It's been an
you.
amazing journey.
Thank you.
You know what to do. Please, this conversation is not ending here. We continue on the comment section. Let us know what you think. You can also contribute as well because people would like to hear your thought on this. Like, subscribe, share. Let's share the good news. My name is Emmanuel, and bye for now.
And my name is Lola. Thank you.
Bye.
And see you next time. Bye.